Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Gay Peas in a Podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Bevan.
And in this podcast, we like to challenge our ways of thinking, to open our minds and to spread light through honest and open conversations. Now, this week, we are chatting with Dr. Carlton. Dr. Carlton Thomas is a gastroenterologist who started his queer health and sex education platforms on Instagram and TikTok a few years ago, which is where we found him. And he has had feature articles in The Advocate and The New York Times. He has travelled the US conducting queer sex education seminars. And here to discuss all things queer sexual health with us today, please welcome Mr. Dr. Carlton. Mr. Dr. Carlton.
Mr. Dr. Carlton, that's very official.
Very official.
Yeah. I feel like I should stand up.
That's great. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate you guys having me all the way from Australia. That's so awesome. I love it.
Oh, it's great. We've been following you for a while. I think during COVID, you know, when we were all so strapped to screens and whatnot, and we're looking for whatever we can to get us through such a rough time, you know, that's when we found you. And
absolutely. That's how I started, actually. I have two kids, and they're twins, a boy and a girl. And at the time COVID started, they were about 14. And so they were on TikTok all the time. And we were locked down in the house and really couldn't go anywhere or do anything. So after a while, I was like, well, let me check out this TikTok thing and see what it's all about. And after like poo-pooing it forever, and then I think I turned it on at like 8 o'clock at night, and I looked up at the clock again, and it was midnight. And I was like, oh my God. It took the platform about 15 minutes to realize I was gay and that I like hairy guys, and and also like Latino and Middle Eastern guys and stuff like that. I was like, wow, this really nailed me pretty quickly. And so I was kind of a lurker for about a month or two, and then I saw other doctors on the platform and said, wow, they're really doing some great stuff. There's one, Jennifer Lincoln, who does sex ed for women. And I really admired her. And then I thought, you know, what do I have to offer? And I'm like, well, you know, I'm a gay man and I'm a gastroenterologist, or like a butt doctor. So who better to teach people anal sex than a gay butt doctor who's got personal and professional experience in having anal sex? And I knew that TikTok was going to be a very difficult platform because you have to tiptoe around certain words. You can't just say anal sex, or you can't even say sex, really. You have to be really careful about what you say. So I use some heavily coded words to make my first couple of videos. And, you know, I tell people that this, you know, my first response to my anal sex videos on TikTok was from a housewife in Iowa who said, how dare you make an anal sex video on a platform for 12-year-olds? And I was like, okay. Oh shit, I can either delete my videos and delete my TikTok and pretend this never happened, or I can just delete her. And so I chose to delete her. I turned off my phone, and I woke up the next day, I had 50,000 new followers. And I realized right away, I've hit a nerve. Some, you know, people want to know about this. And strikingly, I thought I was going after the gays, you know, with my content. Over 3/4 of my initial 50,000 were women. So it made me, you know, it really drove home the point to me that, you know, everybody's got a butt, man, woman, gay, straight, trans, you know, bi, queer. There's no sexuality to butt stuff. There's no masculinity or femininity to it. It's especially for, you know, that's where our G spot is for men. So I mean, it's an intense source of pleasure. So why not take advantage of that? And I think people got really hungry for the information. I kept growing and growing. And then I kind of realized at one point, you know, TikTok is kind of a tenuous thing. All it takes is like 2 or 3 people to slam one of my videos and report them, and I could disappear. And I don't want to lose my whole platform. So let me start building an Instagram platform. So I started doing that about a year into it, about 2 years ago. And I aimed a lot of my information at queer sexual health and queer sex ed rather than just butt stuff, because I felt like it was most important for me to connect with my community and take care of my community. when I was in medical school, the whole thing that got me started on making sure that queer people got appropriate sexual health care, um, it was this, I'm old. So this was in the 90s, early mid 90s. I went to my student health office at my medical school and said, "Hey, I broke up with my boyfriend and I have a new boyfriend and we want to have sex, but I want to make sure that I'm HIV negative before we have sex.
Sure.
So can I have an HIV test?" And they basically slut shamed me for going to student health to ask for an HIV test because, oh, this isn't a county health department to try to help with your trashy sex problems. So I just felt so shamed and ridiculed at the way they treated me, and I said, I never want anyone else to ever feel like I felt. I want queer people to get the information and the testing that they need. And I want to do it without judgment or shame. So that's what I set out for on Instagram. And I started posting a lot of videos about sexual health, about proper STI testing, about how to avoid STIs, even if you don't use condoms. And a lot of people aren't using them these days. Lo and behold, last year, the Mpox epidemic hit pretty hard here in the US. I'm not sure how bad it was in Australia. I know there were some cases, but not nearly as bad as it was here.
Yeah, definitely not as bad as what you guys had.
Yeah, so I kind of saw that coming from the distance when it hit Europe, and there was the Darklands Festival, and I knew that 2 weeks later there was going to be International Mr. Leather Festival in Chicago. And the same people that go to Darklands go to IML. So I kind of raised the red flag then, and then it did nothing but spiral downwards from there. And because I used my platform to educate people, I did lives with people who had Mpox. I set up vaccine referral clinics so that people would know where to get vaccinated. I think I listed over 1,000 clinics, even in Australia and Germany and all over the place. Of course, the entire U.S. and Canada. And I think I helped tens of thousands of guys get vaccinated. I stayed up all night for most of the summer last summer, helping people find medical care for Mpox, how to identify whether or not they had it, how to find vaccinations, how to connect them with mental and emotional support. I didn't do it. I didn't make a dime off of it. I did it all out of the goodness of my heart. And lo and behold, the White House noticed and brought me to the White House this past year for White House Pride. So I met President Biden and took a picture with him, and all these amazing people from the queer community that were there in Washington, D.C. So it's been quite a ride. From getting on my couch one day to make an anal sex video to the White House, the White House, and along the way, it's been like really incredible. I mean, I was named to Out Magazine's Out 100 last year, and then Queer Tea had their Pride 50 for Pride this year, and I was a part of that. My local city here in California, San Diego, they named me the hero of Pride, and I was in the parade and all that stuff. So it's been quite a whirlwind of a year, and then throw in on the Washington D.C. trip. It's been pretty crazy. So the best thing about it though is that my information is getting out there. People are hearing what they need to hear about sexual health and how to make sex better and how to make it safer.
Yeah. I think when I first found you, I most appreciated, and so much since I first found you, but what I first appreciated when I found you was just great short videos on how to take care of your butt and how to prepare your butt and how to have good sex. Because, I mean, we go and get sexual health checkups, but we don't often feel comfortable talking with, the nurses and whatnot about, we've never really done that before. And then your only other option is Google, and you're reading, different blogs here and there. So to see your short, snappy videos on how to just prep your butt quickly is super helpful. Tips for bottoms, tips for tops, all kinds of things. Yeah. It's been quite an interesting ride. There's a technique that I also teach on how to open up your hole called the butt clock. I saw this
And,
recently. Yeah.
Yes,
Tell us about the butt clog.
Tell us about the butt clog, please.
Yeah. So when I was in training in prostate clinic, one of the doctors said, "Hey, if you're having a tough time getting your finger in, just press over laterally to the side and it'll open up a little bit." And I'm like, "Ooh, okay." So so I came up with this technique as foreplay during anal sex called the butt clock, where you actually stick your finger in directly in and keep it firmly straight, and then press over laterally to 9 o'clock and hold it. And that, up against the circle of muscle, the anal sphincter. And as you press, it starts opening up. So I tell people to go to the different clock positions or the different compass positions, however you want to think about it. And then, just hold that pressure there for 30 seconds up against each spot. And that tiny little circle starts opening up. And I've had people from all over the world message me and say, "Hey, you changed my life. My husband and I have so much anal sex now. It's incredible. I love it. He loves it." Men, women, it's been crazy. Another thing that I really find amusing is I had some bottoms text me on my DMs, because I check all my DMs and I respond to all of them. And they said, "Hey, just so you know, your information's getting out there. I went to a top's house the other day. I bent over and he totally butt clocked me."
Brilliant.
So I was like, I need to trademark this or something.
You do.
Yeah.
Hey, Dr. Carlton, I love you talking about men and women, and anyone can have butt sex. It's not just for gay men. And look, our podcast is very varied. We talk about many things, and our audience is really varied as well. So
right.
This goes into the shame as well, but I would encourage any of our listeners that are listening who have maybe followed us from the start.
Yes.
There's no shame in having butt sex, regardless of what your sexuality is. So if you've never done it, give it a go, because it's pretty good.
Yeah, and like I said, women love it, men love it. The prostate gland is there for men. My brother-in-law came to visit this weekend, and he was talking, and I was trying to tell him about how he should have his prostate played with. If he'd asked him if he'd ever had an orgasm where his prostate was hit before, and he was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? No, that's gay. I would never do that." And I'm like, "No, it's not gay. We all have that. You're missing out on one of the biggest sources of pleasure in your whole body. If you've never gotten oral sex while somebody's had their finger in your ass, you're totally missing out." So like I say, anal sex has no gender, no sexuality, no masculinity or femininity, no dominance or subordinates to it. It's all about pleasure. And so I like to tell people the tips and tricks to make it easier. A lot of people are concerned about being clean. That's the number one question I get is, how do I prepare for bottoming? Mm-hmm. And I think one of the biggest things that cuts down the time for preparation, not everybody needs to clean out. Let's make that clear. Not everybody does. I do, and most people do. Most people just feel more comfortable if they clean out a little bit.
Peace of mind.
The clean out process. Yeah, the clean out process is a lot shorter if you have a high fiber diet or take fiber supplements. I take a fiber supplement daily, and what it does is it sweeps the residue out, so that when you go to clean out, there's only minimal work you have to do to rinse out. So my rinse out time cut in over half by just adding a fiber supplement. Only put up the amount of water in your butt that you need to clean out. Remember, the last 8 inches of your rectum is fairly straight, and then there's a sharp turn after that. So if you flood up a bunch of water up into your rectum with a shower hose, it can make the process longer and messier, because it goes up higher, and then it kind of traps in the little loops and everything. And then you're in the middle of sex and you're riding somebody's dick, and then
That's
water everywhere.
Yeah, I'm more of a top here, but that's me. I go to the whole thing like, I'm gonna flush this thing. I'm just gonna flush it out, and then it takes
you forever.
I'm like, oh nah, this is still going.
An hour later. So you really, exactly. And you really only need to clean out that last 8 inches of your rectum, unless you're doing something pretty heavy duty, which, hey, that's great. If you're going to get fisted or something, or use a big toy or something. But yeah, so about 150 cc's at a time up in there. Hold it, release, hold it, release, hold it, release, and until the water comes out clear. And I also tell people that our body has a natural reflex where when you eat, your stomach sends a signal from your stomach to your rectum to empty. So I don't really advise the clean out part until about at least an hour. I don't advise eating an hour for an hour before because you can stimulate your gut movement and have an accident during sex. And that's the other thing is a lot of people starve themselves to bottom. They think, oh, I can't eat all day because I'm going to have anal sex. You don't need to do that. Just be aware of how your body reacts to food, and give yourself enough time to get out of that window where you might have some movement.
Yeah.
So not overdoing it with the clean out. Lots of great lube. I like silicone lube for anal sex because it's a lot more slippery and you don't have to reapply it as much. Now, if you're using toys, it's better to use water-based lube because water-based lubes agree better with the latex of the toys, and the material of the toys. Lubrication, super key. The relaxation part of things, like I talked about with the butt clock, where you open up. I tell people to start on top. If you're that first couple of minutes of bottoming can be kind of harrowing for people. So I tell people to, you need to be in control for those first couple of minutes until you relax enough to be able to go. You need to get things opened up. So I tell people to start on top, slowly sit down on it so that you control how fast and how deep it goes. And then once you get it all the way in and you're kind of taking some deep breaths and you're loosened up a bit and you're ready to go, then the top can take over, or you can stay on top, whichever you prefer.
Yeah. And every butt is so different as well, right? I mean, Bevan doesn't bottom all that much, but he has such a sorry for all our gorgeous family and friends listening. You're learning a lot more about us today, but Bevan's butt, he just seems to open up so beautifully. I get jealous sometimes because I'm like, why can't I have a butt like this? And he doesn't even use it that much.
I know. Isn't it the irony that my butt just goes, "Hi, how you doing?"
Yeah, and hi, welcome.
Hi,
come on in.
Come on in. I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah. And you're right. Everybody really is different. The curves of a bottom and the curves and the top's penis is always differently curved as well. So if you have 5 different sex partners, you may have 5 different sex positions that work best for you based on the curves of your butt and the curves of the penis. So that's another thing to keep in mind. There's a lot of anatomy in there, and if you feel like somebody's hitting a wall in there, they probably are. The front wall of the bladder is right there, and so a lot of times people have this intense sensation they need to pee, or there's a lot of pressure there. You just need to switch positions so that you get around that little that little area of concern. So another big thing that I've really enjoyed as well to help open up is I invested in this dildo that has a small head, and as it goes down the shaft, it gets girthier. So as it goes in, it opens you up a little bit. And this Power Bottom on Twitter told me this secret story. If you're ever nervous about being clean, you do your clean out, you take a dildo, you lubricate it, you stick it up your ass, and then you pull it out. And if it comes out clean, you're good to go. So it serves 3 purposes. Number 1, to check and give you that reassurance that you're clear and ready to go. Number 2, lubrication, because after all that clean out, a lot of the natural mucus and stuff that's in there is gone. And number 3, opening you up so that you're able to enjoy penetration more when it comes to actual anal sex. So that's another big thing for opening up and that mental reassurance. And just keep it interesting. The biggest thing for tops, don't ram it in there. You can tear someone's hole and cause what's called an anal fissure, which is like it's terrible pain. It will end your sex session immediately if you do that to somebody, and they may even have to have a surgery for it if it's bad enough. So take your time. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. So open people up, relax, lots of foreplay, and then go, move on to the penetration side of things. So
Yeah.
Because I think often people think, it's like a porn. They're in and
yeah,
they're off. And it's like, hey,
Well, it's hard not to compare ourselves
Yeah.
to porn, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And it's just like,
right.
this is
And
a journey.
on so many different levels. Yeah, on so many different levels. Yeah, and working with a lot of porn stars like I do behind the scenes on podcasts and stuff. You learn the secrets of the trade. Like a lot of those guys are on trimix injections to keep their dicks hard. So those rock hard, huge cocks are oftentimes injected with medication to keep them that way. A lot of these guys, their only job is to have sex on OnlyFans and on Twitter and on porn. So of course they have great bodies. That's all they do. So you can't go, comparing yourself to porn because it's not really the reality.
Yeah. Hey, Dr. Carlton, I love that we can talk about this in such a shame-free way.
Absolutely, yeah.
But at the moment, it feels like there's more and more hostility toward the queer community, and from afar, seeing some things that go on in the US as well. How does it feel in the community and experiencing that firsthand living in the US currently?
Well, I live in a bubble. I live in California. So California is probably going to be one of the, if not the most liberal, one of the most liberal states when it comes to queer and gay and bi stuff, and trans and everything else. So we have all of our rights. We don't have any weirdo legislators trying to take away any rights. You go to places like Texas and Florida, you have these like drag queen bans and trans bathroom laws and don't say gay in school and just absolutely insane stuff. What's really odd to me is like, cause I've made a point on my national tour here in the US to go to these places. And bring my information there. So I did I headlined Austin Kink Weekend in Texas. I did Unleashed LGBTQ in Dallas. Tomorrow, or actually Friday, I'm flying to Houston to do gear, leather, uniforms, and etc. And I'm gonna teach there. I went to Orlando, Florida, and did a butt stuffed drag brunch. So, I was pulling every lever I could to get the right wing conservatives upset with me. But these places have huge gay populations. Dallas has the sixth largest gay population in the United States. Houston's got a huge gay population. Austin's got a huge gay population. Orlando's got a huge population. It's just that outside of these little bubbles, you have all these right-wing folks that are more in number because these states are huge and they end up creating havoc on the state level. But in reality, in these smaller communities like Orlando, or these bigger cities like Orlando and Dallas and Houston, there's a thriving, vibrant gay scene, and you don't really see a whole lot of persecution in that right. So, I think a lot of it is political. Obviously, whenever there's a tendency for one political party to want the other people to look away at something and distract them with some nonsense, they always go to us, queer folks, trans folks, drag queens, whatever. It is frustrating. It's a little scary. And then legislators, some little legislators I know here who I've talked to at these big conventions say that they feel like marriage equality in the United States is in jeopardy because of our Supreme Court, because of the way Donald Trump stacked it. Some people feel that within the next 6 months we'll lose marriage equality in the U.S.
Well, what happened with Roe versus Wade? I mean, that was like a wake-up call as to what can happen.
Absolutely, and it's not going to stop there. So until the Supreme Court is evened out more, which could take a generation, there is a risk of going backwards on our rights. Luckily, I choose to live in a place that's always going to be safe for me, and it's one of the reasons I grew up in the Deep South in South Carolina, and I knew I had to live in California when I was growing up. I was like, I want to live in a place where I'm not shamed or feel self-conscious, and I can be who I am without any worry. So that's why I went for a larger city in a liberal state.
Yeah, I think as a queer community, we may have to continually gravitate towards areas where we feel safe.
Absolutely, yeah.
As things progress.
But our love and community for each other and our strength together is so strong that, you know, these legislators, I mean, it's like I believe in us so much that I believe our love will triumph,
Mm-hmm.
you know. We have to. I mean, what's the alternative to believe that?
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, and when last year also it felt like people weren't, like nobody was paying attention to the queer community, like the government wasn't listening to us, that we had an epidemic, a new epidemic brewing. We took matters in our own hands and educated each other and rallied our friends and said, hey, you need to go get this vaccination, and here's where you go, and here's when you go, and here's what you need to know about mpox, or, you know, you may want to cool a little bit until, you know, keep it in your pants for a couple of months until things settle down a little bit. So all those sorts of things, you know, it showed what we can do. I think that the New York Times article that I was featured in was basically called "How Gay Men Saved Us from Mpox," because it could have been a really horrible STI that spread through the entire community and not just the queer community. But because we took so much action to stop it, it's settled down into a very indolent thing right now.
Yeah, so where is monkeypox at right now? It's not really something to be too concerned about at the moment?
Not at the moment. I still recommend for people to get both doses of the vaccine just to be safe. The vaccine is 86% effective at preventing illness, and if you do get sick, the protection that you get from it will keep you from getting super duper sick. So I still recommend for anyone who hasn't gotten that, especially if you're playing a lot, and especially if you're not using condoms, to get out there and get your mpox vaccine. You know, overall, and when it comes to sexual health, I have several pillars of sexual health that I think are really important for the queer community. And I'd like to discuss those with you if you don't mind.
Yeah, we'd love it. We'd love it. Thanks.
You know, first and foremost, know your HIV status. If you are HIV positive and you get treated to undetectable and stay undetectable, you can't pass the virus through sex. You can live a completely normal, happy, healthy life. And within the community, we also should recognize if someone is HIV positive but undetectable, undetectable equals untransmissible. So you can't pass the virus through sex. So we shouldn't be discriminating against our own community just because someone's HIV positive, because the majority of people who are positive are taking good care of themselves, and they know their status, and they're often undetectable. So, you know, have the conversation. If they're positive, ask, hey, are you undetectable? And if so, then you have no worry about HIV. Number two, if you are HIV negative and you have risk factors for HIV, then go on PrEP to prevent HIV. There's so many different forms of it these days. There's daily pills that you can take. There's on-demand disco dosing, where you take two within 2 to 24 hours of a sexual encounter, and then one 24 hours after that, and one 24 hours after that, until you've taken 2 pills after sex. And that's been shown to be as effective as daily PrEP. And if you're someone who can plan for sex and you don't really have that much sex, so that you don't have to take a pill every single day, it's a good way to go.
Just a really simple question. You know, for couples that, like, you know, gay couples that are in monogamous relationships, do they need to take PrEP?
No. I don't know. As long as each partner knows their HIV status, there's no need to go on PrEP if you're monogamous.
Cool.
So what I'm talking about is in non-monogamy.
Yes.
So and obviously condoms are the number one way to prevent a lot of things, but with the advent of PrEP, a lot of people aren't using condoms as much anymore because they aren't afraid of HIV or from dying like I was in the 90s, right? So the other pillars that I tell people, you know, get your vaccines for things that are frequently sexually transmissible. You know, make sure that you're up to date on your hepatitis A and B vaccines. Hep A can be it's a virus that hits the liver. It's spread through rimming or oral anal sex. Hep B is a virus that spread the way that HIV is spread through blood and body fluids, and it can also attack the liver and cause liver cancer and even death from the liver failure. The HPV vaccine is available here in the US now up to age 45. HPV is the virus that causes anal warts, genital warts. In women, it's people with a cervix, it's a high risk for cervical cancer. And if you have receptive anal intercourse and are HIV positive in particular, there's a 70 times increased risk of anal cancer with HPV. And then oral cancer as well. I have a friend who just sucked a lot of dick in the 70s in New York, and he got HPV related oral cancer in his throat. So a simple vaccine series of 3 shots can prevent your worries of cancer related issues with HPV. The meningitis vaccine, also very important. We've had several outbreaks here in the US and small little groups, and they've happened across the world as well. But last year we had an outbreak in Florida where 6 or 7 young Latino men died of meningitis. It's spread by close contact, but the way queer people gather, like in steam rooms and saunas and tightly packed clubs and gyms and things like that, that's why it can hit our community a little harder. And it's really, I recommend all queer people to get sexually active, non-monogamously sexually active queer people to get the vaccine, but especially people who are HIV positive. And then finally, obviously, the Mpox vaccine. If you haven't gotten both doses, make sure you've gotten both doses. Those vaccines will help prevent a lot of stuff from happening to you. Next, get your STI testing done properly. The standard and the heteronormative standard of STI testing is get a blood test for HIV and syphilis and hepatitis, do a P test for gonorrhea and chlamydia, and that's it. But gonorrhea and chlamydia are only positive where you're infected. So if you suck a dick and it's infected with chlamydia and you don't get your throat swabbed and your penis or your urethra is not infected, you could have it in your throat. Same in the rectum. Gonorrhea and chlamydia can hide in the rectum. So you should have a rectal swab if you participate in receptive anal intercourse. So it's triple site testing when you go for STI testing. Throat swab, butt swab, urine test, and blood tests to get everything checked out properly. Next, in sexual health, when you go to play with somebody, inspect the merchandise, honey. If it doesn't look or smell right, don't play with it. If somebody's got a big open sore on their penis, get the fuck away.
Yes.
Because it's obviously there's something wrong. And then, another big thing that's big here now, I'm not sure if you guys have heard about it or not, is DoxyPep.
Yeah, we've heard the beginnings of it. Yeah.
Yes, we've got a nice question here about DoxyPep. For you.
Tell us about it.
So DoxyPep is a pill that you take that's 200 milligrams. It's a 100 milligram capsule that you take 2 of within 24 to 72 hours after a high risk sexual encounter, and you can really dramatically reduce your risk for syphilis and chlamydia, and a little bit less of gonorrhea. So it's kind of the cutting edge here in the U.S. as far as STI protection. A lot of people are nervous about it because they're worried that it may build resistance towards some of these infections.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
With Doxy, it's pretty limited that happens with syphilis and chlamydia in particular. But we're going to keep our eye on it. Before the CDC offers an official recommendation on it, they have a 45-day window of public comment on the recommendation right now. But for now, they're telling folks who are gay, bi, queer, or trans women that DoxyPep is a really good option for you for now, and highly consider it, especially if you've had STIs in the past. So that's another arm of our things that we can do to protect our sexual health. So knowing your HIV status, getting properly checked for STIs, getting your vaccines, making sure that you inspect the merchandise before you play, and then considering DoxyPep. And then obviously condoms are great and they do a great job. But if you're someone who doesn't like using them or refuses to use them or just don't want to use them, then these are additional things that you can do to try to reduce your risk.
Yeah. When it comes to risks in sex, Dr. Carlton, I mean,
Mhm.
a lot of times drugs and sex are associated. A lot of, sometimes people won't have sex
Sure.
without drugs. Would you be happy to
Right.
talk about that? I mean, poppers are probably a real entry level thing. A lot of people use poppers. Could we
Yeah.
start with talking
Yeah.
about that and their safety?
Yeah, so poppers are an inhalant. It's sold here in the U.S. as VHS video head cleaner, which no one has a VHS video.
Yeah.
Well, I used to,
I
but
don't
not
think,
now.
but they're inhalants that you sniff. The active compound is similar to amyl nitrate, and it relaxes the blood vessels, but also other things that has smooth muscle, like your butthole. So not only does so you get these because the elasticity of your arteries and veins is made out of smooth muscle as well. They dilate open and blood rushes to your brain. You have a rush to your anal area and your vaginal area too if you have a vagina that helps relax it. So a lot of people swear by it for anal sex, but it's not without potential complications and side effects. You shouldn't use it with Viagra or Cialis, which are sildenafil and tadalafil, which are medications that help with erectile dysfunction because they act similarly and can create a double drop in blood pressure. Try not to use them in high heat intensity situations like the sauna or the bathhouse or the steam room. And then if you have any underlying condition like cardiac or renal disease or neurologic or eye problems, it's probably something you want to avoid. The number one side effect is headaches and dizziness from it. There have been different formulations, and the thing about poppers is they're not FDA regulated. We really have no idea what's in there. So various formulas have various different risk factors. Some people have had eye problems. Some people have been found dead in their bed after sniffing poppers, and that's the only drug that was found in their system. So it's because of some cardiac arrhythmia that happened. So those things are rare, but definitely something to be aware of. I tell people if they're going to use poppers, no doctor's ever going to tell you to use poppers, but if you do, keep those things in mind that I talked about earlier. Less is more when it comes to it, so that you don't overdo it. And it's like any drug or even alcohol. People are going to do it. Just try to maintain a sense of responsibility with using it if you're going to use it. And then as you go into other drugs, certainly party drugs are where things start getting a little bit slippery on the slope for overall health risks and decision making. Here in the U.S. right now, fentanyl is an opiate that is cross-contaminated in a lot of street drugs. So, and all it takes is 200 micrograms to make you stop breathing. So if you think you've got a little baggie of cocaine and you just snort it without testing it for fentanyl, you could die. And in my county, here in San Diego County, it's the number one cause of death for people 18 to 45 is fentanyl overdose.
Wow.
Often unintentional. It kills two people, I think. It killed over 450 people in this county last year. It's just insane. And our county's got 2 million people in it. So just a tragic way to go. So when I tell people, if you're going to use drugs, and people are going to use drugs, I can shout until I'm blue in the face, don't use drugs, but people are going to do it. So when it comes to harm reduction, this here is something called Narcan or naloxone. It's a spray. And I recommend anyone who goes to raves or circuit parties to have a spray like this on them, so that if they see somebody get in trouble with a potential overdose, they can spray that up in their nose, and it is the reversal agent for fentanyl. There's also these little test strips. I think, do I have one in my? Yeah. This is a fentanyl test strip. So basically, it's kind of like a COVID test. You just take a little bit of your drug and you dilute it in water, and you stick the strip in it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a COVID test. If there's 2 lines, it's got fentanyl. If there's just 1 line, then it's clear.
Okay.
So those are things that you can do for harm reduction.
Yeah.
So the fentanyl overdose thing is a really big deal here right now. Obviously, there are some drugs that are harder than others, especially like crystal meth has killed a lot of people my age and younger over the years. It's a devastating drug that once people get started on, that's kind of hard to stop, and some people just do it till it kills them. So, so very brutal drug. So, obviously, drugs have a lot of risk. You can do some things to reduce harm if you're going to use them anyway. The big thing right now, though, is the opiate situation.
Okay.
Do you guys talk about that in Australia? Do you talk about Narcan? Do you talk about is there a problem with fentanyl there yet?
I think we hear, I mean, ketamine is probably one of the main things that we hear that people are using.
I think that's a pretty big one at the moment.
Yeah, ketamine. We've still got ecstasy use and And
I mean, with ketamine, the good thing about ketamine is it pretty much wears off in 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So somebody sniffs it, they get high, and if they don't like what it does to them, just don't do any more of it, and it clears out of your system within like 20 or 30 minutes, and you're completely back to normal. But if you keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it, you can get into what's called a K-hole, where you're just kind of completely dissociated. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you have to do a lot to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Dr. Carlton, you mentioned that you have 2 children.
Yes.
We'd love to hear more about what it's like being a gay dad and that journey.
Yeah. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I went straight through medical school and residency and fellowship and had twins when I was 33 years old through surrogacy. So they're now 18 and off in college. So you certainly give up a lot of flexibility and travel and big gay parties to go to be a dad. But you get that you get to watch 2 beautiful human beings grow and have an impact on the world. And my kids are awesome. They're incredible. They're such good people. Like my daughter got into NYU Tisch for theater because she wants to be on Broadway, and her best friend also applied at the same time she did for early admission. She found out she got in, and her best friend didn't get in. So she pretended that she didn't get in until 2 months later because she didn't want to hurt her friend's feelings. Yeah. And I thought, wow, that's so pretty sweet. Incredible. Yeah. And they're super duper close, and they spend a lot of time together. He's in school in Boston, and she's in New York. But good kids. It's funny. I took them on a cruise about 3 years ago on Christmas, and we were out in the Caribbean, and I said, kids, I haven't asked you this. We haven't talked about this. All right, do you identify as gay or bi or lesbian or queer or trans? And they're like, sorry, Dad, we hate to break it to you, but we're both straight. So I did that thing like,
how did you break down?
And it's kind of funny. They're very aware of the Dr. Carlton internet phenomenon thing that's happening, and but they don't talk a lot about it. But my daughter, when she went to NYU, she had to, in her first day, they had to say something interesting about their family. And she said, well, my dad's a TikTok and Instagram star. And they said, oh, well, who's your dad? And, granted, this is a theater school. So there's a certain amount of gay people there.
Oh, yeah.
So when she said Dr. Carlton, she said there was a big gay gasp in the room. She goes, Dad, all the bottoms at NYU follow you.
And also the tops. Let's just put that out there.
All the gays.
All the gays.
So it's been fun, and like I'll be out and about in New York, walking down the street, and somebody will come up and say, hey, can I take a picture with you, or can I talk? I just want to thank you for what you did for me during the Mpox epidemic or whatever.
Yeah.
And that I get a little bit of street cred from them for that, but Yeah, but I keep them off of social media. I never show pictures of them. I think it's personally, I just think it's in their best interest because I don't
Mm-hmm.
like people get doxxed so easily these days. Um, that I'd rather let them have their own life and not be mixed up in my stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can I ask you, how do you moderate that for yourself with being on social media? Do you give yourself some time out from it to be able to? How do you moderate it? Because it can become a little
Well,
bit obsessive. And
that's a good question. For me, I've nobody's ever known who I am before, ever.
yeah,
So right after I got over the 200,000 mark on TikTok, we went to Bear Week in Provincetown. My husband and I did for a couple summers ago. And as soon as I got off the ferry there, every 5 feet, somebody was stopping me to take a picture or to say, "Hey, I know you," or "Oh,
mm.
I like your videos," or whatever. And for me, I ate it up. I loved it. But for him, he was like, "Jesus Christ, another one."
Yeah.
After five, it gets kind of old, Carlton. So, so I always try to pull him over and say, "Hey, this is my husband. This is my husband. Meet my husband. He's great. And
Yeah,
pull him into it." Um, I definitely try to shield myself from negativity
yeah,
because there's always somebody who's got something negative and nasty to say about you on
yeah,
social media.
yeah,
So if somebody starts being nasty on my social media, I just go ahead and block them and delete their comments.
yeah,
So I
Yeah.
don't I don't even engage them
Mm.
yeah,
because I did engage them early on, and it led to a lot of grief and me like depressed and sitting in my room and crying sometimes because people were being so horrible and nasty to me.
Completely exhausting for you to try and justify everything consistently too. I mean, it's just falling on
Right.
deaf
Well,
ears.
not and even in our own community last year when I was going through the Mpox stuff and telling people, "Hey, cool it for a little bit, until you get
mm,
vaccinated."
mm.
I got a lot of backlash from people who said that I was, how dare I tell gay people not to have sex? I'm horrible for the community. I'm a bad influence, and they're going to expose me for what I am. And I'm like, I'm just trying to, I'm just trying to help you, man. If you don't want to listen to it, by all means, go do your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, so I do try to give myself a little bit of a break. I used to post like almost every day. Now I post like once every week or two. Um, just to and, part of that is God. I've got two kids. Luckily now they're in college, so they're doing their own thing. But a full time job, more than full time job. I'm still got a thriving private practice here. I do all the social media stuff, and then on some weekends I do these shows in different cities across the country. So
mm,
it's a lot. It's a
Mm.
lot, and I just go a million miles an hour. I can't stop.
yeah, yeah. And you've got to look after yourself. You got to look after your relationship because, yeah, if you don't do
Yeah.
that, as we'll end up in a bit of trouble. Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, and one of the good things for me to point it out how annoying it can be is I had a big thing in Dallas a couple of weeks ago where I was with some other guys, some real celebrities, not just me, like Billy Eichner from Bros,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
and
yes.
yeah, so we were hanging out drinking, and we went to the Roundup Saloon in Dallas and went dancing. And every 5 minutes, somebody was going up to him and asking him for a picture or saying hi and stuff like that. And I got completely ignored. And it made me realize how my husband must feel whenever we go to a gay bar anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I get that a little bit. Matt was on a cooking show a little while ago.
I was on a reality,
Reality
cooking
cooking
show
show.
here in Australia
Yeah.
about 10 years ago.
Oh, cool.
Down in
yeah.
our home state in Tasmania, we're in Victoria now. We've moved up 6 months ago. But yeah, I sort of got that little bit because everyone knew Matt. So we'd be out and
Yeah.
people would be asking, can I have a picture? Or so, yeah,
Oh, are you still cooking?
Are you still cooking?
That
No,
was
he
all
doesn't
the
cook enough. He should be cooking more. So yeah, I get that little bit. So yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
How amazing though to be dancing with Billy Eichner. I mean,
I know.
how was he? Is he a good guy?
He was a great guy. He gets such
Yeah.
a bad reputation, but he was super nice. And we talked for a long time and hung out and chatted, and very gracious guy, and took pictures with anybody who wanted to take a picture with him, and didn't get annoyed with them. It was really cool. Um, and you know, just it was an amazing group of people that were there at that. It was queer people from all different aspects of queer life, like actors like Billy Eichner, uh, politicians like Brian Sims,
Mm.
India Moore and Dylan Burnside from Pose. Um, there was a gay NASCAR race driver there. There's all kinds, and like me for some reason, I guess.
For good
But
reason.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. It was just a really cool experience, and it was good for me to see the other side of things.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it can be a totally different world.
Absolutely.
But also, I was pinching myself at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, saying, "Oh my God, I'm on a dance floor with Billy Eichner and Brian Sims, and Jesus, wow, how did this happen?"
All for good reason and well deserved as
Yeah,
well.
and
How
well deserved.
amazing. You do so much for us. Like I said, we're in the southernmost part of Tasmania. You reached us down there and your impact
That's
is
good.
really,
Yeah,
I know.
really
I'll
great.
take that.
Yeah, look,
Yeah.
Dr. Carlton, after that becomes Antarctica. So that's how far you reached.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah.
That's pretty far. That's
It-
pretty far. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things about my platform. I think that a lot of people don't realize is I do a lot of behind the scenes talking to people who are in countries where it's illegal to be gay.
Mm.
And I had one guy from Saudi Arabia one time send me a message and say, "Hey, doc, I have something going on in my butthole. I don't know what's happening, but if it's an STI, and it could be because I had anal sex a couple of weeks ago, I could be executed for being gay. So could you just take a look at it on a vanishing picture on Instagram and just tell me what you think?" And the guy sent me a picture. And I'm like, "Oh, that's just a hemorrhoid. Don't worry about that." But just to take that kind of angst and pressure off of someone's back, who's in a position like that,
Mm.
a lot of people don't realize that a lot of stuff like that happens every day behind the scene. I just don't talk about it a lot. But there's so many people from around the world who aren't as lucky as we are in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
and Australia who could be put in jail or even murdered for being gay.
It's a good perspective again for us to understand again how lucky we are to live in the societies we live in. As hard as we think it is sometimes with the struggles we go through on a daily basis, as queer people, we're lucky.
Yeah, we still have to fight every day, but at least we're at a different point than a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we've been talking a little bit about access to good, queer health, and here in Australia, and we generally have great access.
Yeah, we do. Yeah,
Free access to that, and we know that around the world, as you just said, some people don't have access at all, or they're fearful.
Right.
They're fearful if they do go to any doctor that could have major consequences on them.
Yeah.
Right. And even here in the US, it really depends on where you are. In a big
Correct.
city or a very gay friendly city, you can get whatever you need. But if you're in a rural town in Alabama or somewhere, then finding a gay friendly doctor to talk to you about your anal pain when you have anal sex is going to be a little bit hard. So
And even here in Australia, in regional areas, it is difficult. People want to reach out and find a queer doctor. It's very difficult to be able to do that.
If you are in a regional area, Google it. If you're near a capital city, or hit us up, message us, and we will do some work for you. We will also help you to find your nearest practice.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll tell people to talk to the people that are their friends that live in that area. I tell people to go on the apps and say, "Hey, who do you use as a doctor in this town? And do you like them? And do you trust them? And is it a good experience?" And there are certain websites in different countries for queer health providers as well.
Yeah. Oh, well, we've had the most incredible chat with you today. And I really appreciate you so much as well telling us about what it's like to be a gay dad, because that's something that, we're married, and that's something that, we have had discussions about many times as well. In Australia, it's a bit harder with surrogacy. We can't exchange money or, we can't pay for surrogacy here in Australia. It's illegal. So to find a beautiful friend with a womb that would do it for free is, it's tricky.
Anyone out there with a womb? Anyone with a womb? Anyone?
But that's something that we aspire to.
We aspire
as
to,
well
and
at some point.
I say to Matt, I just want to do it sooner and later because I will be too old to pick up the child.
And I tell people, even though I did surrogacy, there are so many children out there who already exist who need love.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
adoption's great too. You know?
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
And we'll look at all those options, but it's a little harder here in Australia to be able to do that. But we hope and always for change that we're able to do that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And have little you and me running around.
I know, it'd be great. Yeah,
keep fighting for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I have to say, like when my kids were newborns and we went into the local gay brunch place called Hamburger Mary's, where there's like drag queens and everything. We went in with our double wide stroller, and about a third of the guys in there were like, "Oh my God, you guys have kids! It's so cute!" And a third of the people were completely indifferent, and a third of the people looked at us with dagger eyes, like, "What are you doing?"
How dare you give love to a child? My God!
How dare!
I know, right?
If you could leave our community with any final words today, would there be anything else you'd like to say?
I think the biggest thing I want people to understand is how easy it is to protect yourself against and your sexual health. With anything from condoms to vaccinations to PrEP to post-exposure prophylaxis with DoxyPep to prevent STIs. Make sure that you get your STIs screenings done properly. A lot of people here in the U.S. don't do it properly. A lot of doctors have had people say, "Hey, listen, I went to my doctor and they said that test didn't even exist." When you go on the CDC guidelines website and it shows that that's what you're supposed to do, it kind of cracks me up that there's that much illiteracy on queer health among straight doctors sometimes. So, fight for your own health. Ask for things that you think you need based on what we talked about today. Find someone who you trust and you can be open and honest with, because we need to know what you do in order to be able to really maximally help you with your health.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, you can find Dr. Carlton everywhere: TikTok, Instagram @Dr. Carlton. Of course, you can get in touch with Dr. Carlton. It sounds like you reply to Instagram
Just
messages.
Don't give him too many DMs.
Yeah. If you have any questions or concerns or want to ask me something privately and you're embarrassed to talk about it, message me anytime and I'll discreetly give you a response that's completely confidential.
Oh, we appreciate chatting with you so much today. Thank you so much for joining us in the
pod.
pod.
Thank you.
And, of course, we will be back next week here on Two Gay Peas in a Podcast. Find us everywhere. TikTok, we're on there now. Yes, look, Ash, my sister, hello. You got me on there, finally. Thank you. Instagram as well, @2GayPeas, and YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us. We'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us.
See you guys.